An exhausted and delirious young man washes up on a beach. Before passing out, he glances up briefly to see two young children playing in the sand. He is found by an armed guard and brought to a large seaside palace where the owner, an elderly Japanese man, is informed of the visitor's arrival. Only a handgun and a brass top were discovered on him. The elderly man lets the outsider in. He is dragged inside, fed food that he finds difficult to eat, and the old man picks up the brass top and says, "You remind me of someone, a man I met in a half-remembered dream. He held some unconventional beliefs." The scene changes, and the stranger looks up in realization. In an uncannily similar dining room, Dom Cobb and his partner, Arthur, discuss their services with potential client Sato, focusing on protection against thieves who specialize in obtaining valuable information from a subject while they are dreaming. Cobb explains that because the mind is vulnerable to attack while one is sleeping, he must train Sato's mind to unconsciously defend against extractors in order to protect any secrets he may be concealing. He demonstrates his skill as the best extractor there is and his knowledge of all the involved tricks to support his claim. Sato appears dubious and gets up to leave the room, telling Cobb he'll think about it. Then he goes out to the main hall to join a small gathering. In response to the trembling in the room, Arthur glances at Cobb and says he knows. As they make their way to an outdoor balcony where other partygoers are mingling, Arthur asks Cobb what she's doing while pointing to a woman nearby. Cobb promises him that he'll handle it and that the job will go on as planned. He has seen where Sato's secrets are hidden. The moment Cobb mentioned the word, he cast a quick glance toward a safe. When the woman asks Cobb if he misses her, he walks up to her. He says that he does, but he is unable to continue to trust her. Cobb fastens a rope to a chair's leg and throws the other end out the window as they withdraw into a private space. As she inquires about whether the kids miss her, he motions for Mel to take a seat. Cobb pauses a moment before saying, "I can't imagine." When Mal gets up from her seat, he almost falls out of the window as he rappels out to a ledge below. As the lights in the room come on, he breaks into the room below and enters the safe, taking out a manila folder and replacing it. A guard holding Arthur and Mal standing next to Sato can be seen as the man turns with his gun drawn to see them. As he moves his gun across the table, Cobb asks Sato if she told him, "That you're here to steal from me, or that we're actually asleep?" Sato replies. The three of them are connected to a PASIV, portable automated somnacan intravenous device, which administers the sleep aid somnican to keep them all dozed off and enable dream sharing. Another of Cobb's partners, Nash, keeps an eye on them. Before going into another room to check on Arthur and Cobb, who were both dozing off in chairs, he checks Sato, who was sleeping on a bed. A tub filled with water is visible above Cobb's chair. Outside, there are increasing numbers of explosions and yells as a rioting mob moves down the street. Mal threatens Arthur with a gun inside the dream, but Cobb tells her it's pointless and hands the manila folder to Sato because shooting him will only wake him up. As she shoots Arthur in the knee, causing him to scream, Mal smiles in agreement but says that pain is only imagined and imagined pain. Cobb dives across the table, grabs his gun, and shoots Arthur once in the head. Then Sato's guard opens fire as he flees the room. Arthur wakes up and tells Nash that things are unraveling, but that Cobb still has time to complete the task before checking on the still sleeping Sato. As the dream starts to end, Sato hurriedly opens the manila folder, and when he sees blank pages inside, he screams in rage. In spite of the building collapsing all around him, Cobb is able to slip away for a brief period of time to examine the contents of the real folder that he had concealed in his jacket. As Arthur reaches under his pillow, Sato is crushed by debris and awakens in the apartment. Arthur is unaware of this. Nash is instructed by Arthur to kick Cobb in the face in order to awaken him. Cobb is pushed backward into the tub by Nash, and just before he wakes up, Cobb's dream is overtaken by enormous waves crashing through the windows as he hits the water. Cobb tells Sato that not all the information he needed was in the file he stole, and Sato is eventually subdued after reaching under his pillow for his gun and grabbing Arthur. Sato chuckles and says that because he was aware of Cobb's ruse from the beginning, all the information he had was in the file. Cobb and Arthur were given access to his mind as part of an audition, which they failed, and he told them, "Your deception was obvious." Cobb throws Sato to the ground and demands that he provide them with the information they require regarding his expansion project, stating that his employer, Cobb Engineering, won't tolerate failure. Sato reveals that he is familiar with the carpet's material and that it should actually be made of wool, rather than polyester, as he laughs again while pressing his face into the carpet. As a result, he deduces that he is still asleep. Sure enough, Tadashi, a young man who keeps track of the time on the PASIV device, finds Sato, Arthur, Nash, and Cobb dozing off in a train car. In order to signal to Nash that their time is limited, he puts headphones over his ears while playing music. Nash can hear the music, though it is playing very softly in the dream. While praising Cobb for creating a dream within a dream, Sato becomes perplexed at his inability to control this dream as the rioting mob outside gets closer. They are not in Sato's dream, as Nash reveals. He has them in his dot. Arthur, Nash, and Cobb are awakened on the train after the mob enters the room through the door and starts attacking everyone there. Cobb scolds Nash, the dream's architect, for improperly designing the carpet and gives Tadashi a wad of cash before departing, telling them that every man for himself. After a short while, Tadashi resumes his casual pose and smiles wryly to himself, leaving Sato alone in the car. Cobb takes his gun and points it at his temple while spinning a brass top in his apartment. He lets out a sigh of relief as it hits the ground and puts the gun down. He answers the phone to find his two children, James and Philippa, and their grandmother on the other line. When they inquire about his plans to return home, he replies that he is unable to do so due to work. Cobb pauses and informs James that Mommy's not here anymore. When he asks if their mother is with him, an image of Mal crosses his mind. Before their grandmother hangs up, he tells them to be good and that he'll send gifts with Grandpa. Cobb is informed by Arthur, who's just knocked on the door, that their ride is on the roof. As a result of their failed job for Cobb, Cobb decides to fly to Buenos Aires, where he plans to hide out while Arthur claims to be returning stateside. When they open the helicopter door to find Nash and Sato waiting for them, Cobb asks him to send his regards. Nash is beaten and bruised. It appears that Nash tried to sell out Cobb and Arthur for his own safety, but Sato has other priorities. Cobb is offered the opportunity to perform Inception for him, which Arthur claims is impossible. Cobb, however, asserts that it is not only difficult, but also extremely difficult because it involves introducing rather than removing an idea from someone's mind. Sato then asks him if he wants to go home to his children in America. He turns away, adamant that he'll figure out how to mend fences with Cobb himself. He assures Cobb that, should he be successful, all it will take is a phone call for the charges keeping Cobb outside the country to be dropped. Cobb accepts out of desperation, and to Arthur's exasperation. Sato joins them on the helicopter as two thugs drag Nash away to an undetermined fate. Sato listens as Arthur explains the nature of Inception to him, warning him that just putting an idea in someone else's head does not guarantee that it will be adopted. The idea might not be their own, and the subject might very well reject it after learning this. Cobb may think otherwise, but Arthur maintains that genuine inspiration is impossible. To ensure that his own Proclus Global has complete control over the energy production industry, Sato explains to them why he applied for the position. He needs the CEO of a rival energy conglomerate to split up his father's business. Cobb agrees to do the work despite the difficulty of the assignment. After dropping them off at the airport, Sato gives Cobb some team selection advice. Cobb takes a trip to Paris to meet with his father-in-law Miles, a university professor who taught Cobb and Mal how to share and create dreams. Miles refers Cobb to a better architect when he asks for one that is as good as he is. Ariadne, a graduate student of his, is introduced to Cobb. Cobb immediately puts her to the test by asking her to design a maze that takes 1 minute to create and 2 minutes to solve. After she wins Cobb over with her abilities, he explains his line of work and what is expected of her. As an architect, it will be her responsibility to plan dreams and build virtual mazes that the dreamer's subconscious can explore while Cobb and his team work. Cobb makes an effort to inform Ariadne that they are actually dreaming as they converse in front of a cafe. Ariadne panics at the realization, and the dream abruptly ends. Ariadne discovers that Arthur is keeping an eye on them when they awake in Cobb's warehouse workshop. When Arthur says they had only been together for 5 minutes, Ariadne reacts with surprise because it seemed like hours. Cobb explains that the mind functions faster in a dream, so time moves slower. Once more sinking, Ariadne is given the chance to imaginatively change the physics of the dream. The dream's inhabitants, who are projections of Cobb's subconscious, are drawn to Ariadne's architectural marvels like white blood cells are to a virus. Ariadne makes the error of building a bridge from her memories, which Cobb notices and his subconscious responds to as a mob, separating Ariadne from Cobb until Mal shows up and stabs her. While Arthur explains that Cobb's subconscious became aware of her as an invasive being and she was unable to wake up immediately because there was still time on the clock, she wakes up and Cobb rushes to the bathroom. She was unable to wake up and could only do so by passing away. Cobb pulls out his top, spins it, and sighs as it collapses. If Cobb's subconscious is as troubled as it seems to be, Ariadne will not allow herself to open up to him, and she storms out of the warehouse indignant. Cobb enters the space again and promises Arthur that she will be back, but he must travel to Mombasa to bring on board a former teammate. He offers Ames, whom he finds gambling in a bar, a position on his team as a forger and imitator. Ames nods in agreement before warning Cobb that he is being followed by two men at the bar. They are Coble thugs, and Cobb knows them to be so. They must be after him because the Cedo job went wrong and there is a bounty on his head. Cobb is able to flee while Ames creates a distraction, sending the thugs on a chaotic chase through the streets of the city. At the last second, Cedo arrives in a limousine and picks up Cobb first, then Ames. He explains that he's been tracing Cobb to protect his investment. Ames introduces them to a local chemist he is familiar with, who conducts Somnixon experiments and who could be useful to their team. Cobb explains that Yusuf might need to use a three-layered dream in the course of his work. If not for a unique remedy he has created with a potent sedative, according to Yusuf, this would be otherwise impossible due to the instability of dreams the deeper you go. Yusuf shows them how effective it is by bringing them downstairs, where they see a large group of men sleeping while an elderly man keeps watch over them. Cobb is informed that these men are coming here to wake up because they have been living in a dream world. They are able to dream for what feels like years thanks to the sedative, which also helps them fall asleep quickly and stay asleep. Cobb tries the sedative on himself and is impressed by its effects, though he feels uneasy after waking from a vivid dream involving Mal. He persuades Yusuf to join his group. Ariadne, in the meantime, makes her way back to the workshop and tells Arthur that she had intended to stay away, but couldn't resist the pure creation that came with dreaming of an architectural structure. As he introduces the idea of creating paradoxes, such as the Penrose Steps, Arthur transports her into a dream. He also says that Mal, Cobb's wife, died after their marriage. Arthur tells Ariadne that Mal was beautiful in real life, despite her evil nature in the dreams, where she is now only Cobb's projection of a person. Together, the group decides to build a three-level dream with the planet idea on the third level. The intended victim is Robert Fisher, the CEO, and heir to Fisher Morrow, whose father, Maurice, is sluggishly deteriorating from illness. In order to better understand the father-son dynamic, and to make the most of his imitation skills, Eames chooses to imitate Robert's godfather and business partner, Peter Browning. Because of their tumultuous relationship, and in an effort to persuade Robert to dissolve his father's business, the team decides that a good suggestion will prevail over a bad one. My father wants me to be my own man. The majority of the plans are overseen by Cedo, who also decides to enter the dreams with the team as a tourist in order to get a full accounting of any success or failure. Arthur explains to Ariadne the significance of totems, which are small, individual objects that help a person distinguish between dreams and reality, as the team gets ready over the coming weeks. Cobb's totem is his top, which falls over in reality but spins in dreams. In order to ensure the validity of her own die, which only she can touch, Arthur instructs Ariadne to make one for herself. As her totem, she fashions a semi-hollowed bishop chess piece. The team decides, with Cedo's assistance, that they will carry out the task on a Boeing 747 during an international flight from Europe to Los Angeles, a 10-hour flight, in order to give themselves as much time as possible to finish the job. Thus, they will have a week to experience the initial stages of their dreams. Sato reveals that he has acquired the entire airline, which simplifies the task and eliminates the need to buy out specific areas of the aircraft in order to gain access. Ariadne discovers Cobb daydreaming in the workshop one evening after a day of making plans. She connects herself to his device out of curiosity and finds herself falling into an elevator. She notices Mal and Cobb seated in a living room, where Mal has already picked up on Ariadne's presence. Cobb stands up and enters the elevator with Ariadne, guiding her through some of the levels, which Ariadne learns are each made up of a particular memory, contrary to what he had earlier warned her not to do. Horrified after seeing Cobb's torment over leaving home without saying farewell to his children, Ariadne takes the elevator alone to the top floor, where she discovers a hotel room with its belongings strewn about. Mal looks up from the couch and asks what she's doing as she steps on some shattered glass. Ariadne tries to explain that all she wants to do is understand, but Mal becomes combative and grabs a piece of glass. Mal rushes forward, screaming at Cobb that he didn't keep his word, and Cobb arrives, taking Ariadne back to the elevator. As Ariadne and Cobb leave the dream, Cobb explains that Mal's passing and the suspicion that he was responsible for her death prevent him from returning home. Ariadne doesn't ask him if he did or not, and he thanks her for that, but she does caution him that if he thinks he can imprison Mal in that way, he is mistaken. He must let go of his sorrow over her passing. Cobb needs a friend who can relate to what he's going through, so Ariadne persuades him to let her accompany the group into the dreams. At that moment, Sato and Arthur arrive and announce that Robert will be traveling with Maurice Fisher's body to the United States in a few days. As soon as the plane takes off, the team settles in with Robert in the first-class section of the cabin. Cobb returns Robert's passport, pickpocketed by Arthur, as a conversation starter, and then drugs his water before proposing a toast in his father's honor. Miranda Nolan, the paid-off flight attendant, helps set up and activate the PASIV device while Robert falls asleep shortly after. The team enters Yusuf's dream first as a unit. As team members are picked up, it is raining heavily in New York City. As part of the kidnapping ruse, Arthur and Sato commandeer a taxi and pick up Robert, Ames, and then Yusuf. Cobb and Ariadne follow in a different car until an unexpected train slams into them, stopping them momentarily. The team is then forced to immediately execute evasive maneuvers while hiding out in a warehouse after gunfire opens up on the taxi. It is then discovered that Sato has been shot in the chest. Sato is placed on a table while Robert is led into another room. Cobb intervenes and explains that because of the sedatives they've taken, they won't wake up if they die, preventing Ames from shooting him to put an end to his suffering and wake him up. Instead, they will be transported to limbo, a shared dream state of the unconscious where time is essentially non-existent. As they consider what to do in light of the military encroaching on their location, the team is incensed by this and questions why they took such a risk. They learn that the projections attacking them are a component of Robert's subconscious defense against extraction, which has been trained to fight against it. The team decides they must finish the job as soon as possible because Sato's condition is deteriorating, and they cannot wait any longer due to the approaching defense projections. Cobb admits to Ariadne that he can't control Mal from entering his thoughts when she questions him about his control over his own subconscious. He explains that they had been experimenting with dream states to see how deep they could delve into their subconscious. Together, they ended up in a situation where they were unable to leave because of the time left on their PASIV clocks. They spent years building up their new lives. After a while, they got used to considering limbo to be their reality. Cobb and Mal committed suicide on train tracks after about 50 years in an effort to bring them back to reality. Mal, who had returned to the real world, insisted that she was still dreaming and that the only way to wake up was to die because she loved Cobb too much. Cobb arrived at the hotel room they always stayed in on their wedding anniversary to discover it trashed and the window open. Mal, who was sitting on the other side of the ledge outside, told Cobb that she had written their lawyer a letter expressing her fear for her life, effectively framing him in the event of her demise and leaving him with no choice but to follow her. Mal jumps to her death despite Cobb's refusal to follow through on his offer to talk her out of it. Cobb's case for his innocence is overruled by the mounting evidence against him because she was determined to be legally sane by 3 psychiatrists. Cobb must leave the country and leaves his kids with their grandmother. Cobb is persuaded by Ariadne that he should concentrate on the mission rather than blaming Mail for his death. Robert is being questioned by Cobb and Arthur in order to learn the combination of his father's safe, while Ames gets ready to impersonate Browning. Browning is used as leverage to put pressure on Robert. Before being brought into the room with Robert, Ames shouts from another room, as if being beaten in an effort to jog Robert's memory. He informs Robert that there is an alternative will in the safe, one that, if Robert chooses to do so, will dissolve the business. According to Browning, Robert's father cherished him and wished for him to create something on his own. One word from his father's final words that Robert could make out was disappointed, which convinced him that his father didn't love him, Robert says, as his defenses close in on the warehouse. The team again puts pressure on Robert for a combination as the warehouse is in danger of being breached. He tells them a series of random numbers that come to mind before they load him into a van and drug him to sleep. Yusuf maneuvers the van away from the pursuing projections as they all board and prepares to enter the second level of the dream. In Arthur's dream, Cobb resolves to use Mr. Charles, a method in which he introduces the subject to the fact that he's dreaming in order to garner trust. Robert is approached by him at the bar, and he informs him that he is there to defend him because someone is attempting to gain access to his mind. By pointing out the strangeness of their surroundings, he convinces Robert that he is dreaming and calms Robert to keep them under control. He aids Robert in remembering that he's been abducted and directs him to a hotel room where the rest of the team has gathered, the first few digits of which coincide with those Robert initially thought of for the combination. In this level of the dream, Sato is in better health, but he soon starts coughing. When Robert's projection of Browning materializes, Cobb persuades Robert that Browning was the one who abducted him by requesting information about whether or not Robert witnessed Browning being tortured by the kidnappers in his previous sleep level. Given that Robert's second testament gave him the power to overthrow his father's empire, which Browning could not allow him to do, Browning admits that he was responsible for the kidnapping. To enable Robert to make his own judgment, Cobb suggests to Robert that they investigate what was actually kept in the safe by going into Browning's dreams. Once more connected, the team is led by Arthur, who has stayed behind to keep an eye on them and deliver a timed kick when necessary after Robert agrees, unknowingly aiding in his own inception. While Yusuf is still operating the van in the first dream, Arthur is forced to fight off more of Robert's defensive projections as the group enters the third dream, which is actually Robert's. Robert's safe is closely guarded in a mountainside fort in the third dream, which is set in snow-covered mountains. The team splits up to draw the guards away. Cobb goes with Ariadne, Ames travels alone to ward off the guards, and Robert and Sato begin ascending a mountainside to access a blind side of the fort. While Arthur battles Robert's projections, the van briefly loses control and tumbles down an incline. As the van tumbles, the effect is replicated in Arthur's dream, where he spins as gravity reverses and then rights itself. Yusuf continues to drive and ends up in a tight spot on an elevated bridge with one car full of projections stuck with him. Before driving backward off the bridge, Yusuf plays music through Arthur's headphones to warn him of the impending kick. The force of the collision launches Arthur in his dream into the air, and as the van falls in midair, there is a loss of gravity. The third level of the dream is also affected by the effect. A mountainside avalanche comes crashing down on Sato and Robert as they turn to look up the mountainside and are forced to cut their lines. Cobb notices they miss the first kick, but when the van crashes into the water off the bridge, they still have time for the second one. Van drives off the bridge, 10 seconds left to impact. In Dream 2, 3 minutes to synchronize the kick. Arthur struggles with a way to do this without gravity. In Dream 3, 60 minutes left. With little time left, Cobb demands to know if there is another entrance to the fort, and Ariadne finally gives in and informs him of a hidden underground entrance that Robert and Sato can use. Sato's condition worsens as Cobb sends them there. Cobb and Ariadne keep a sniper's view as they wait for them to enter the main room where the safe is. Sato succumbs to his wounds and is left to lie down while Robert moves on, coughing up blood. However, another person also enters Cobb's field of vision as Robert does. Prior to Cobb gaining consciousness and shooting her, Mal descends from the ceiling and kills Robert. Cobb and Ariadne rush to the location as Ames is instructed to enter the room. Since there is nowhere else Robert could have gone after Cobb discovered him dead, he declares the mission a failure. He is persuaded by Ariadne, though, that if they enter limbo, they will have enough time to track down Robert and bring him home. In order to assist Robert while Cobb and Ariadne are unconscious, Eames agrees to use a defibrillator to restart his heart. Arthur comes up with a unique plan. While still in Dream Level 2, the team is bound together by phone wires, and he enters the elevator with them. With the goal of using explosive force to create gravity and initiate a kick, he lines the exterior of the car with explosives and counts down until the kick. Cobb and Ariadne tour the crumbling world that he and Mal once created while they were in limbo. Before they arrive at the structure where Cobb knows Mal must be, they pass by a number of old houses and structures. If they track down Mal, they'll also track down Robert, since Mal will try to use something Cobb wants to get him to her. They arrive at the apartment, and sure enough, Mal is there to greet them. She tries to persuade Cobb once more that he belongs with her and their children in their real home, but he tells her a terrible truth. Mal believed her dreams were real because of it. While they were in limbo, Mal had hidden away a truth that she no longer wanted to accept. Her totem was kept in her safe, lying on its side and immobile, telling her that her dream, her limbo, was a reality. Cobb broke into her safe and spun the top to try to convince her that this world was not real in an effort to save her mind. However, he did not know that, once they really woke up, she would continue to believe that. This is how he knew Inception would work, because he used Inception on Mal first, and her subsequent death has plagued him ever since. He was aware that it would result in her death. If Mal finds out where Robert is, and she says he's on the porch, he tells her he'll stay with her in limbo. He is discovered by Ariadne, who gives him an impromptu kick by pushing him away. With Ames' assistance, Robert regains consciousness in Dream Level 3. He then opens his own safe and discovers a picture of his dying father muttering some final words inside. Robert admits that his father was disappointed that he couldn't be him, but Maurice replies, "No, I was disappointed that you tried." When Robert asks where he can find the will, Maurice gestures toward a cabinet and an old paper fan his father had made for him. Robert sobs as the van crashes into the water after he looks up to see his father has passed away. In Dream 2, Arthur hits the detonator, and the explosives force the elevator down, creating artificial gravity on the team. In Dream 3, a series of explosions set by Ames rock the fort, collapsing the main floor. Ariadne feels the pull of Cobb's synchronized kicks while she is in limbo, and she summons Cobb to join her. Cobb says that he won't be with Mal while in limbo. Sato is now in limbo after passing away at this point. Cobb promises to return but must track him down. Ariadne jumps off the structure and returns to Dream 1 after landing on her feet. When the van is submerged, Robert awakens inside and uses Browning to get out. Before leaving the van and leaving Cobb, Arthur, Ariadne, and Yusuf share an oxygen tank. When Robert and Browning make it to shore, Robert says that his father really did want him to be his own man, and that he's going to do just that by liquidating his father's business. Ames discards the Browning mask after concluding that the mission was successful. Cobb drifts ashore and is discovered by the armed guard while he is in limo. The elderly Japanese man, who's been brought to the seaside palace, recognizes his brass top. Sato receives a call from Cobb asking him to come back with him and uphold their agreement, as he remembers what he was there to do. Sato, who is getting on in years, reaches for Cobb's gun. Cobb is startled to see Arthur and Ariadne smiling at him when he suddenly awakens on an airplane. He turns to face the now awake Sato, who picks up his phone and dials after remembering. When the plane touches down in Los Angeles, Cobb anxiously makes his way through customs, where security checks his passport but lets him through, wishing him a happy return. Robert pauses briefly, as if remembering a vague dream, as he is passed by the rest of the team as Cobb walks past them. Cobb observes Miles calling him over in front of him. As they make their way home, Cobb pauses before pulling out his brass top. At the same time that his kids are approaching the back door, he spins it on the kitchen table. The top continues to spin and sways slightly as he rushes over to them, delighted to see their faces once more, and the screen turns black. Thank you for watching our movie analysis on Movie Decoder. We hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more movie analysis and commentary. And don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay up to date on our latest uploads. If you have any suggestions for future movie analysis topics, leave us a comment down below. We love hearing from our viewers and appreciate your support. Until next time, happy watching.